The Qatar Grand Prix might have appeared exciting on the surface, but behind the scenes it was an absolute mess, thanks to the FIA's decisions. The race director, Rui Marquez, played a key role, and his calls, well, lack of them, completely shifted the dynamics of the Constructors' Championship. In fact, they handed Ferrari a huge, albeit questionable, advantage. Now, in a title race where every single point counts, these actions from the race control have left McLaren fuming, while Ferrari has every reason to celebrate. But this raises a serious question. Are we witnessing a scenario similar to the departure of Michael Masi? Could we see Rui Marquez follow in his footsteps? The chaos began with Alexander Albon's wing mirror coming loose on lap 29. It fell right onto the track near the finish line, and that's when things started to spiral out of control. At that moment, McLaren was looking strong. Lando Norris was comfortably sitting in second place, just 1.7 seconds behind Max Verstappen, and Oscar Piastri was holding on to third with a solid 2.3 second gap over Charles Leclerc in fourth. Carlos Sainz was trailing in fifth. Everything seemed set for McLaren to snatch a big haul of points, bringing them closer to their first Constructors' Championship win since 1998. But then, things went wrong. Very wrong. So, with the race in full swing and McLaren looking set to score a solid 33 points, it was Ferrari who could only manage 22 points. The gap between the two teams was shrinking, and McLaren was getting closer to their historic first Constructors' title since '98. But, just as McLaren was closing in, the FIA decided to make their move. Or rather, not make it. When Albon's wing mirror ended up on the track, the race control waved double yellow flags, which is a signal for drivers to slow down. But there was no safety car. McLaren, with their eyes on the prize, assumed the safety car would come out soon and decided to pit Piastri to gain some ground. The problem? The safety car didn't show up until lap 35, a full 6 laps after the yellow flags were waved. In the meantime, Valtteri Bottas, trying to respect the blue flags, accidentally hit some of the debris from Albon's mirror. This caused carbon fiber and glass to scatter across the track, putting every driver at risk. But instead of acting quickly to neutralize the race control allowed this mess to unfold. It was a huge gamble on driver safety, and the consequences were far-reaching. As the debris spread across the track, it caused chaos for several drivers. Sainz and Hamilton, both caught up in the aftermath, suffered punctures. But what made matters worse was that McLaren, thinking the safety car was just around the corner, brought Piastri in for a pit stop to take advantage of the neutralized conditions. Unfortunately, the safety car didn't show up until lap 35. Way too late to help Piastri, who had already lost valuable time. Meanwhile, Verstappen, Norris, and Leclerc pitted during the safety car period, getting an easy advantage while drivers like Piastri, who were caught off guard, couldn't capitalize on the situation. For Leclerc, it was like a gift from the heavens. He moved up to third place after Piastri's pit stop and later into second after Norris got penalized for failing to slow down during the yellow flags. As for Sainz and Hamilton, their races were all but ruined. Sainz, who was in a good position earlier, finished a disappointing 6th, unable to recover from the damage and the straight-line speed of Pierre Gasly's Alpine. Hamilton didn't fare much better, his race completely undone by the puncture and the lost time. Despite all the setbacks, Lando Norris didn't give up. Furious with the decisions made, he fought hard and managed to salvage a point by finishing in 10th place. On top of that, he also claimed the fastest lap, proving just how fast McLaren's car was. Piastri, on the other hand, fought valiantly to make up the lost time but couldn't overtake Leclerc for second place. He had to settle for third, a bitter pill considering how close he was to achieving more. For McLaren, this wasn't the result they'd hoped for. They'd been in a strong position to widen their lead, but instead, they saw Ferrari close the gap, taking advantage of McLaren's misfortunes. Thanks to their impressive 1-2 finish in the sprint, Ferrari clawed back 9 points, narrowing the margin even further. Overall, McLaren's loss in the points was minimal, just 3 points, but the implications for the championship were massive. Andrea Stella, McLaren's team boss, made no attempt to hide his frustration. In his post-race comments, he praised his team's performance but didn't hold back when criticizing the FIA's handling of the race. He acknowledged the team's strong pace and solid strategy, but emphasized how unfortunate it was that they were hindered by decisions outside their control. Oscar had a great race, but the timing of the safety car dropped him behind Leclerc. It's one of those things in racing, he said. Stella also had a word about Norris's penalty, calling it harsh. He pointed out how McLaren's pace was more than enough to challenge for the win, but the FIA's decisions left them with an uphill battle. Lando showed great speed and determination, especially after that penalty, Stella said. The way he fought back to claim a point was impressive, but it's not the result we wanted. We need more consistency from race control. The bigger picture, however, was the lack of proportionality in the penalties. Norris' stop-and-go penalty for not slowing down enough under yellow flags seemed far too severe given the circumstances. Stella stressed that the FIA needed to reassess how penalties were applied, especially in situations like this, where the impact of the yellow flags wasn't as clear-cut as it seemed. Rules are rules, Stella said, but there has to be a fair approach. We've seen races where penalties weren't as severe for similar situations. The FIA should look at this more carefully in the future. And with the race now behind them, McLaren's focus shifted to Abu Dhabi. Despite the disappointment, they were determined to finish strong and put the chaos of Qatar behind them. But as McLaren set their sights on Abu Dhabi, the issues with the FIA's handling of the Qatar race raised serious concerns about the integrity of the sport. The governing body seemed quick to impose penalties on certain drivers, like Norris, but when it came to safety, they were far slower to act. The delayed deployment of the safety car not only endangered the drivers, but also fundamentally altered the course of the race. Now Ferrari, who had been trailing McLaren, found themselves in a stronger position. With just 21 points separating them, the Constructors' Championship was still very much alive. The stakes in Abu Dhabi couldn't be higher. While McLaren still held the upper hand, the events in Qatar had shown just how quickly the tide could turn. Every decision, every lap, and every point was now more crucial than ever. For McLaren's drivers, the battle wasn't just about recovering from a tough race, but also about minimizing mistakes and making the most of every opportunity. Norris especially was still reeling from the penalty, but his fight back to 10th place was a testament to both his determination and the pace of the MC38. However, that penalty, and the way it was handled, was a bitter reminder that anything could happen, and the FIA's unpredictable decisions could decide the title. Oscar Piastri, though less vocal about the penalty, had his own struggles in Qatar. His race was ruined by bad timing, with the safety car coming out too late for him to gain any advantage. Yet despite these setbacks, both Piastri and Norris were determined to turn the page. The season finale in Abu Dhabi wasn't just another race for them. It was their chance to seal the deal, finish strong, and prove that McLaren's performance had been more than just a fluke. However, the shadow of the FIA's decisions continued to loom over the team. The late safety car deployment, the penalties, and the overall lack of consistency had left everyone questioning the governing body's priorities. Rui Marquez, who had been at the center of this controversy, faced severe criticism from teams, drivers, and fans alike. McLaren's frustration was shared by many, with some even speculating that this could be the final straw for Marquez's tenure. While McLaren remained focused on the road ahead, the FIA's handling of the race had sparked a wave of doubt and frustration across the sport. The late safety car, the penalties handed out without clear justification, these were the kinds of things that undermined the integrity of Formula One. Fans were beginning to wonder, was the FIA really up to the task of managing the sport? The tension didn't end with the drivers' frustration. Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff, always outspoken, compared the FIA's handling of the Qatar Grand Prix to something straight out of a reality TV show. And to be honest, it wasn't hard to see why. The constant personnel changes within the FIA had already raised eyebrows. Race director Niels Vidic's sudden departure before the Las Vegas Grand Prix was just one of several high-profile exits. These changes created a sense of instability within the governing body that only added to the confusion in Qatar. The FIA's internal chaos was becoming impossible to ignore. Alongside Vidic's departure, other key figures like senior phone steward Tim Mayer and deputy Formula 2 race director Jeanette Tan stepped down ahead of the Qatar Grand Prix. These exits, combined with the mishandling of crucial race moments, painted a picture of an organization struggling to maintain control of the sport. Wolff, with his usual mix of humor and concern, quipped that if the FIA kept going like this, they might as well have their own reality TV show. But the underlying message was clear. There was a real problem. Formula One needed accountability, consistency, and a clear direction from the governing body. Without that, the sport risked losing the very thing that made it so thrilling, its integrity. The FIA's struggles didn't end with behind-the-scenes turmoil. It became even more public when Formula One drivers decided to take matters into their own hands. They penned a letter calling for more transparency and accountability from the FIA. The response? FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem dismissed their concerns, saying his governance style was none of their business. This didn't go down well with many in the paddock. The situation was quickly escalating, and Wolff wasn't shy about calling it out. He applauded the drivers for standing together, noting that their collective voice was crucial in protecting the integrity of the sport. "We need to protect the holy grail of this sport," Wolff said. "We need responsibility, accountability, and transparency. That's how we ensure the sport's future." It was a message directed not just at the FIA, but at everyone involved in the sport. The need for introspection was clear. Were all these leaders truly doing what was best for Formula One? The drivers and teams, Wolff included, were beginning to realize the urgency of the situation. With tensions running high and no sign of a resolution, the FIA's leadership was under immense pressure to restore trust. But with the season finale looming and a championship on the line, would they manage to get their act together? Or would this drama spill over into the last race of the season? As the season finale in Abu Dhabi loomed, one question lingered over the paddock. How much influence would the FIA's decisions have on the championship outcome? For McLaren, Ferrari, and all the teams fighting for position, it was clear that the FIA's actions could have far-reaching consequences. In a sport where every point counts, even the smallest mistake or misstep could make or break a team's championship hopes. For McLaren, the Qatar Grand Prix had been a painful reminder of how quickly fortunes can shift. The FIA's controversial decisions had caused a loss of points they could ill afford, but they weren't giving up. Norris and Piastri knew that, in Abu Dhabi, it was time to put the chaos behind them. There was no room for error. The championship battle was still theirs to lose, but they needed to perform at their best and hope that the FIA wouldn't throw any more curveballs. The pressure on the FIA was now higher than ever. The sport's integrity was on the line, and with only one race left in the season, the governing body had no more room for mistakes. Would they finally make the right calls? Or would we see another race clouded by controversy? As the final laps of the season approached, everyone, drivers, teams, and fans alike, was holding their breath, waiting to see how it would all unfold.